That was a replica of the Silver Dart, Canada's first powered aircraft, testing its wings a couple of weeks ago. On Monday, it will, weather permitting, fly again in Baddeck, Nova Scotia, recreating that first flight 100 years ago. And you can bet the town is flying high too. As Tom Murphy tells us, anticipation is soaring as Baddeck gears up for the historic celebrations.
The main attraction, a replica of the Silver Dart, the spindly plane that carried Canada into aviation history.
Oh, it's a pretty exciting time, very historical. I mean, this is what Baddeck is known for.
100 years ago, Alexander Graham Bell, the inventor of the telephone, took a group of adventurers under his wing. Together, they designed and built the Silver Dart and later flew it for the first time in Canada, here in Baddeck.
Didn't happen anywhere else in the British Empire, and I think that it really should be celebrated.
Restaurants and hotels in the summer resort village, normally closed this time of year, have reopened.
Just the buzz that it's created for Baddeck and the area, I think it's been a wonderful thing.
But good luck getting a room.
Unfortunately, I don't have anything, and the village is full completely. So
some people came from as far away as Hamilton, Ontario.
Why? This is history again. 100 years ago, some guy got in a rickety old airplane and went flying for the first time in Canada. And we're here to have fun.
That's our throttle.
The Canadian Air Force hopes the event will inspire others to dream of taking to the skies.
I thought it was pretty cool.
The Canadian scheduled to fly the replica on Monday is a former NASA astronaut, and he says we owe the Dart respect.
So it's really good that lots of people are looking at this, and we get people thinking about how this fits into modern life, because this is the beginning of it all for Canada.
Almost 100 years ago on this frozen lake, Canadian aviation history was made. Now this community is hoping to relive the moment. Tom Murphy, CBC News, Baddeck, Nova Scotia.
And watching Monday's events very closely will be Gerald Haddon, a man with a special connection to Canada's first pilot, J.A. Douglas McCurdy, who flew the Silver Dart into history.
Now, who took you on?
I met up with Gerald Haddon at the Canadian Warplane Heritage Museum in Hamilton.
Oh, okay.
Gerald is Douglas McCurdy's grandson.
Yeah. I knew him for the first 19 years of my life, so I knew him very well. I spent my holidays down in Baddeck, Nova Scotia at their summer residence. I visited him in Government House when he was Lieutenant Governor of Nova Scotia. He was a force, a real factor in my life for the first 19 years.
What specifically do you remember about him?
In spite of all his worldwide recognition, he was a very humble man, and he never ever talked about himself. And this is a quality that people noticed about him immediately.
What did he tell you about that first flight?
It was the feeling of lifting off in Baddeck, in Canada. It was absolutely exhilarating. He was speechless. And the flight was fairly short. It was about 48 seconds, just over half a mile at 30 feet, 40 miles per hour. And he was so excited that he wanted to come back and do another flight.
Did he realize his place in aviation history at that point?
No, he was too busy thinking about the flight. It was more Alexander Graham Bell that felt the occasion, that was thinking about the occasion. He didn't want to do any more flights that day, and he sent telegrams to all the news services in the world, all over, just to tell them about that.
When you were growing up, did you realize how important he was in aviation history?
As I got older, I began to realize, and then he won a lot of awards. At one time, he was considered the world's best pilot. He was Canada's first pilot. He was issued the first license in Canada in 1910.
So let's go back to that first flight. What was the scenario? What did he tell you when he was flying the Silver Dart?
There were about 200 Baddeckers and school children there. School children had been let out, and they all came down. Everybody came down. They heard about this flight. There were a lot of skeptical people. People didn't believe that he could do it. There was a lot of snow, and it was beautiful. And the scenery was wonderful. And he looked down. He looked at all the people on skates, because practically everybody was on skates. Alexander Graham Bell was in his big red sleigh. And he looked at everybody skating around, and actually some of them were trying to skate after him. And it was a very joyous, wonderful occasion with most of the town out to celebrate this flight.
What was it like for you to watch that replica, which you worked on, go down that runway and lift off?
There's no words to describe it. I was very lucky. I was in a helicopter, and we swooped down low behind the Silver Dart. And there I was, the grandson, looking at the Silver Dart 100 years later. And it was doing a picture-perfect run. Was
your grandfather with you?
He was. He was in spirit, yes. He has been in spirit. He has been with me this past year working on the replica of the Silver Dart.
When you're in Bedeque, what do you think it's going to be like to be at the actual place, watch the reenactment of this amazing moment in aviation history, which your grandfather was such a part of?
It's going to bring back memories of what he did. It's going to bring back the importance of the flight, because that's really the creation, the father of Canadian aviation. And it's going to be a memorable moment. It might even be a few tears. Who knows? It's going to be an experience, as I say, a once-in-a-lifetime experience. And I know my grandfather will be there in spirit with us.
Gerald Haddon. Well, the National is planning something special for the centennial of flight. On Monday, Peter Mansbridge will be live in Bedeque for Road Stories, Flight into History. And they were marking that anniversary in Ottawa today. Skaters on the Rideau Canal got a great view with some current and vintage aircraft. Some nice F-18s out in the sky. A sunny, beautiful day for it, too. We'll have all your weather details coming up next.